In this video, I will be comparing the SSL channel strip plugin from Waves and Universal Audio. Is there a difference and which one sounds better? For demonstration purposes, we're going to be comparing this on a drum bus, a guitar bus, and some vocals. So why this plugin? Well, since the release of the 4000 series E model channel strip in 1979, this British-made channel strip has become one of the most iconic recording studio channel strips in history alongside Neve. To this day, it's one of the most popular multi-feature plugins out there, and it will enable us to give a direct comparison between both brands. Waves Audio was founded in 1992 and hold claim to creating the first ever audio plugin, the Q10 Paragraphic EQ. UAD was originally founded in 1958 by Bill Putnam Sr., who notably invented the first multi-band EQ unit and the concept of the vocal booth. Putnam Sr. sold the company to JBL in 1984, and in 1999 his sons Bill Jr. and Jim refounded the company to recreate the analog hardware units of their father's legacy and to bring the company into the digital age with their groundbreaking analog emulation plugins. Let's dive into the computer and hear how both of these plugins sound. So we've got a Logic project up here for a song of mine called I Wish, coming out in a couple of weeks, and I've selected the drums and the guitars in the intro and the vocals a bit later on in the song. And I've taken all the processing off all the individual channels, and we've just got these two SSL plugins on the bus, and we're going to A/B from one to the other. So pulling the plugins up, the first thing you can see here is that the UAD version on the left here is bigger. It looks a lot better, it's cleaner, it's clearer, it's more detailed and generally more aesthetically pleasing. You'll notice there are some extra features on the UAD as well, and we're going to talk in more detail about the XFMR button a bit later and the equalizer select button as well. But the first thing to mention is that UAD have designed this plugin and many other of their plugins to be integrated with their Apollo hardware. So if I go up into the console app here, what I can do is I can take this plugin and plug it into the Unison setting here, which means I can record and monitor through this channel strip. And I can also write that to tape should I want to do that as well. So it's offering you a lot of flexibility for monitoring and recording. So presets, each brand comes with their own presets. Now obviously they're different brands, so none of these presets are on both. The UAD model has 31 presets from various different producers, but this is where the Waves wins because the Waves plugin has 131 different presets, so it has 100 more from a list of people including Chris Lord-Alge, which is pretty great, Steve Lillywhite, Dave Darlington, Joe West, Sean Sullivan, Ross Hogarth, and Mike Hedges. These are titans of the mixing industry world, so it's really great that Waves have collaborated with these guys to get their plugin presets. So on the drum bus, I have selected the Stuart Price Make Anything Better plugin, and I've tried to copy that as exactly and precisely as I can onto the Waves plugin. Let's take a listen to the drums on their own, and then we're going to A/B both plugins as we go. Alright, so not a huge difference, but I'm feeling the UAD just has a little bit more space to the sound, which I quite like. Now let's start bringing in some compression. So I think this is where we can start hearing the quality of the plugins here. Now, there's still not a great deal of difference, but I'm just feeling more space, more presence, and more width to the sound with the UAD plugin. Let's try some gates. Now, one extra feature the UAD has here is that there are 3 different gate settings. There's an expander setting, which drives the sound a bit more. G1 is a very quick gate, and G2 is a slower gate to give a fuller sound. Let's scroll between those 3 with the UAD. So obviously they're very quick, tight gates to the point where it's taking out the 8th note on the hi-hat on the 8th note there. Let's compare that gate with the Waves. So I'm just feeling the UAD's got a bigger sound there. It seems to have more air and a bit more life to it. So another feature of the UAD here is that we have a selection between the line and mic inputs. And again, we can control that from the Apollo, from our hardware, as well as controlling the phase and the -20 pad there and the stereo linking if we need that. Now what I'm going to do is flip between the line and the mic, because when we use the mic input, we can select this XFMR button, which is a Jensen transformer emulation switch. So let's A/B that and hear how much of a difference that makes. So it seems to be just focusing the sound a little, just warming that and controlling that a little bit better. Now, I've heard it's supposed to add a lot of bottom end, but I'm using headphones, so I'm not going to get that in these. Maybe you guys are getting that on speakers. The other feature with the UAD is this equalizer selection switch to go between the black and brown EQ emulations that the original unit had. Now, the black is a sharper, more surgical EQ, where the brown is a smoother, more gentle EQ. I believe it only applies to the low frequency filter here, but let's have a listen to how that sounds. And I'm just going to boost the lows here to try and emphasize this. So you can hear how that's a bit of a wider curve on the brown EQ there. So moving on to guitars, my good friend David D'Andrade has played guitars on this track for me, and I think he's done a fantastic job. Let's hear how they sound on their own, and then I'll bring in the two different plugins again. So I think the difference between these two plugins is a little bit more noticeable here. With the UAD, I'm feeling more of a stereo spread in my headphones, more top end and more air, whereas the Waves feels a little bit more focused, I dare say a little bit more compressed, even though I've got the compression settings the same. Let's bring in some compression with these as well. Yeah, and that for me just amplifies the difference. It's just a bigger, more spacious sound with the UAD. Now with the UAD, let's try this mic line input and the XFMR setting. So yeah, I feel like that's focusing the sound a bit, warming it up, and smoothing it out quite a bit. Very subtle, but I quite like that. And finally, the vocals. I have a single vocal soloed here with both plugins on. This time I've chosen a Waves preset, which is the Chris Lord Algae lead vocal preset, which I quite like. And again, I've tried to copy the settings as precisely as I can onto the UAD. And just to mention another preset that I quite like on the Waves plugin is the backing vocal preset here. What that does is takes the low pass filter up a bit and the high pass filter down a bit to focus the vocals, compresses them more, and really helps them sit nicely on the mix, and I use that on all my backing vocals. Right, let's A/B the sound again. So don't let this go. Won't you try one more time? Because I want you to know that there is still life left in the middle of their soul. So again, I'm just feeling more space, more air and more presence with the UAD plugin. Let's hear it with some compression. So don't let this go. That's smooth. Won't you try one more time? Because I want you to know
that there is still life left in the middle of their soul.
So yeah, I'm feeling the Waves plugins just focusing the sound and not letting it breathe enough. Now I would go for that sound for backing vocals, but not on the lead. So I'm definitely preferring the UAD there. Let's hear the UAD through the mic emulation.
So don't let this go. Won't you try one more time? Because I want you to know
Prefer that off.
that there is still life left in the middle of their soul.
And let's just A-B these one more time.
So don't let this go. Won't you try one more time? Because I want you to know that there is still life left in the middle of their soul.
So I think the difference in these plugins really becomes more obvious when you're adding in the compression. So one final thing to mention between these two plugins is the Waves version enumerates your parameter changes there. You can see the numbers coming up in that little box. Whereas the UAD version doesn't, so you can't accurately quantify what you're doing. So this comparison process has been a visual guesswork process, and it's a bit of a shame that UAD haven't implemented that. But other than that, I definitely think the UAD plugin is a better plugin. I think it sounds better. So with the UAD plugins, for those of you who don't use UAD stuff currently, you can only use UAD plugins with UAD hardware. So if you have an Apollo Twin or something similar in their line, that gives you access to their DSP power. And what that means is it's all off-site processing. So none of the UAD plugins are processed by logical Pro Tools on your computer. They're processed by their own Shark computer chips on the devices. Now what that means is that you can only use a limited number of them. Because they're such powerful plugins, you do run out of DSP power quite quickly. On my Apollo Twin, I have 2 Shark cores. There is a 4-core version available. And with 2, I will run out of plugins after about 8, depending on the DSP usage and intensity. So I have a satellite unit that expands that with another 8 cores, and with that I can get about 35 plugins in. So I still have to use these reasonably sparingly, so I will prioritize the UAD plugins for my lead vocals, and then I'll use the Waves plugins for backing vocals. So a common question that is regularly debated in forums online is why are UAD plugins so much more expensive than other companies, including Waves? Well, Waves plugins at full price aren't actually that much different to UAD plugins at full price. Where I think the general consensus that Waves is a cheaper brand comes from is that to stay competitive, Waves are always offering ridiculously good sales. Some people speculate Waves keep their prices down to stay competitive in a market where plugin piracy is a problem. And compounded by the plethora of new software companies creating their own native plugins, competition in this market is high. As far as I'm aware, UAD plugins are not piratable because of the UAD hardware-based DSP infrastructure that they're built on, hence they can hold their price. Other suggestions online include that although Waves model their plugins on hardware units, they don't actually model on the exact hardware units, and also they're not using the images of those hardware units for their branding. In some cases they are modeling specific models, so they may have to pay a license fee on that. UAD are likely paying licensing fees because they're selling their plugins as official digital versions of the original hardware units. Waves can also stay competitive as a company because they have a wider reaching sales market. The brand has a firm hold in the live music plugin scene, establishing Waves plugins and servers as industry standard tour-level audio processing tools. Now, information on these licensing and pricing debates is patchy and it's difficult to substantiate any of these claims, but I thought you might be interested to know some of the theories that are out there. Thanks for watching, guys. If you found this video useful, please subscribe, tickle that little like button. It really does help my channel grow. Content is going to be coming out twice a week on everything audio, music production related. Stay